Well, this is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview. A first look at what is on the front pages. First, though, our top stories this evening. Energy bosses have met with government ministers to discuss support for vulnerable households as fears grow of another winter cost of living crisis. The Israeli government has warned of full-fledged war in the West Bank after at least 10 Palestinians were killed in Israeli operations there. And the Prime Minister has laid out plans to reset the UK's post-Brexit relationship with Europe during a trip to Berlin. Well, hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with Kevin Maguire, the Associate Editor of the Daily Mirror, and Lucy Fisher-Whitehall, Editor of the Financial Times. Welcome and great to see both of you.
Good to see you, Anna.
So let's see then the front pages, starting with the Telegraph. It leads on potential tax rises in the autumn budget, with the headline, Fuel Duty could be next in the upcoming tax grab. Daily Mail also reports motorists could face a fuel hike in October. On the front of the Mirror, Sir Keir Starmer to work with the EU on migrants and trade, but insists Britain won't rejoin. And the Eye says the Prime Minister will need to agree to a wider youth mobility scheme to reset EU relations. Daily Express has this on Nigel Farage's criticism of the Prime Minister for not addressing the migrant crisis on his visit to Berlin. And The Guardian reports that the previous Conservative government woefully underestimated migration spending. Front of the Times, the Chief Probation Officer claims that releasing thousands of prisoners next month is a big risk. The Financial Times leads on the investigation into whether the social media app Telegram breached EU digital rules. Meanwhile, the Metro leads on the Ryanair chief executive's call for a 2-drink airport limit to prevent drunken violence on flights. And The Sun says smoking is to be banned from pub gardens. Daily Star reporting drivers in Gloucestershire had a miracle escape after a glider crash-landed onto a road. But a reminder, by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out those front pages for yourself while you listen to our guests. Let's head straight to Kevin and Lucy. We are seeing a daily report of what might be in the budget. Starting, Lucy, with the Daily Telegraph, then, fuel duty could be next in this proposed tax grab. Tell us more.
Well, we had this big intervention from Keir Starmer on Tuesday when he warned that the budget coming on October the 30th is going to be painful, but that those with the broadest shoulders will bear the heavier burden. Now, today in Berlin, he was asked outright if he's considering a hike in fuel duty, which, of course, hasn't risen for 14 years under the Conservatives. In fact, Rishi Sunak cut it by 5 pence following the war in Ukraine and the cost of fuel rocketing. So there's a lot of speculation that Rachel Reeves could reverse that 5 pence cut. That would be worth £2 billion, so raise a fair bit for the Treasury coffers. Keir Starmer today outlined once again his what he calls his triple tax lock for working people: no rise to income tax, VAT, or national insurance, but wouldn't go further than that. So the Telegraph has picked up on that and saying, you know, suspicious he hasn't commented or ruled out, when given the opportunity, a potential rise in fuel duty.
And the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, put by us the questions about inheritance tax, capital gains tax, also refusing to be drawn into speculating on what her budget will be. I'm not writing my budget with weeks to go, she said. But are wealth taxes a prospect? And how do you think the tone of what Sir Keir and his Chancellor have been doing has been going down with the public?
I would have thought some rises in capital gains tax and closing of inheritance tax loopholes are exploited by people who are really wealthy are almost certain. I would have thought, yes, they're on the way. They wriggled out of it during the election campaign whenever asked, saying our plans don't require any tax rises other than those we've set out. For instance, VAT on school fees for 6,500 teachers, and non-DOMs, and a few of the minors. But I think they're absolutely there. Of course, they're blaming it on the black hole from the Tories now. Both Labour and the Conservatives were accused by the Institute for Fiscal Studies during the election of not being open and clear about the future prospects. Yeah, I would expect it to go up. But look, we're going to get this now almost every day about what is going to be.
Daily Mail going on the same, to be fair, in terms of fuel duty.
You know, fuel duty, that freeze and that 5p cut, the cumulative cost.
Even during austerity under George Osborne.
Yeah, the cumulative cost to the Treasury, or leaving money with motorists, is about 100 billion over that period. And it's also the 5p cut. It was the Social Market Foundation, which is a centre-right think tank, said actually the cut was regressive because it put most money in the tanks of higher earning households because they spend more on fuel, got bigger cars. I think the figures were the top fifth got 24% of the 5p gain. The lowest earning fifth got 10%. So I could see an argument for it, and fuel duty as a proportion of the fuel we buy has fallen massively. It's now 52.59p of the fuel you get, which is what I saw diesel for £1.40.9 today. Yeah. So that's what you're getting on. You're probably better at maths than me. What, about 40% or something in that region? It used to be in the late 60s. So it has fallen. So I can see, no one wants to pay more, but if you want services and you want public finances tackled and so on, well, something's going to go up. But I think the big mistake they've made, I think Keir Starmer's got the wrong tone because he's almost given away hope and optimism.
So you mean it's just miserable, is it?
Yeah,
Is that,
yeah, you can say, look, it's terrible, you've got a poor inheritance, some justification for that, you can, a legitimate argument, but how are you going to make it better? And then, of course, Rachel Reeves came up with a standalone cut to winter fuel allowance, 10 million pensioners, some on as little as £220 a week, going to lose it up to £300 a year when energy prices are rising. It just created the wrong landscape ahead of the budget.
Yeah. And if you look at social media, you're robbing pensioners and giving it to train drivers. You've got these battles that in the public's mind that you've sort of self-created. So how do you think it's going so far, this idea that blame the Tories, prepare for tax rises and clobber pensioners, in some people's view, who cannot pay their fuel bills? How do you think this is shaping up as an argument for them?
Well, I think that there is a sense, including in Labour circles, that this bid to try and blame the Tories for this dire financial inheritance has been quite leaden-footed. It hasn't been kind of rolled out in a skillful a way from a comms perspective, as perhaps we saw during the coalition era when, George Osborne, whatever your views of his politics, was a master of communications. And I spoke to some Labour insiders today who said, Rachel Reeves and the Labour High Command would have done well to get in independent voices, go, department by department and audit exactly what was there, give more concrete examples rather than have such a kind of political sort of, assault on the Tories in the way it's been packaged, this claim that there's this £22 billion black hole left in the public finances. And of course, the Tories have hit back. Well, we wouldn't have necessarily given the very generous public sector pay awards that are, far beyond inflation, which you mentioned, Anna. So I think it has been not as successful as they would have hoped. I think with the intervention by Starmer on Tuesday, talking about this budget going to be incredibly painful, things are going to get worse before they get better.
But the problem is they've been worse, haven't they?
They've been, yeah.
We've been living through energy crisis, cost of living crisis, a pandemic. Yep. People need to see some cheer and some sunny uplands.
Let's hope and optimism and answers and solutions and where you're going to get.
Yeah, like the Obamas delivered for Kamala Harris last week.
But it was easier for the Tories and the Lib Dems in 2010 because most newspapers backed them. And I remember Nick Clegg.
And they blamed the banks at the
Nick
time
Clegg joined in
yeah.
and said stupid things like Britain's like Greece and Britain's going to go bankrupt. No, Britain wasn't going to go bankrupt, but it would be lapped up by papers and put on the front and pushed all the time. And that rhetoric, that message was pushed. But of course, most papers didn't back Labour at the last general election and waiting to pick holes in him. And Labour's got to prepare its case much better and be far more careful, realising it's got a whole load of Fleet Street editors who are crying the Tories are out and would like them back in. So you've got to think, right, you've got to deal with that. So you've got to be very careful with your arguments and don't score own goals. Winter fuel payments going is an own goal. It's a silly old goal. I think it's a completely false linkage to train drivers. But I can see why it is made and how it is made, and they've not pushed back against that. That's ridiculous, but they haven't. They just haven't pushed back. So there's no link at all.
And Lucy, your paper, the FT, investors in a frenzy to offload assets as fears mount of a capital gains tax rise. This idea of wealth taxes and, how people, try to get rid of stuff before October the 30th.
Exactly. So I think allowing the speculation to run rife may have unintended consequences. Some of that could be good in stimulating activity. Some of it could be bad in encouraging people to sell their businesses for fear of, having a higher level of capital gains tax levied on a future sale. And in fact, we saw that back in 2021, the budget then, there was, again, these rumours running rife about CGT rising, and we saw people sell businesses rather than continue to grow them. So that was seen as a bit of a misstep by the Conservatives. I do think it's interesting, as well as talking about the individuals with the broadest shoulders, whether that is second homeowners, business owners and property investors who could be hit by capital gains tax. Keir Starmer made clear he was also thinking about companies in his speech earlier this week. He talked about water companies and said he supported kind of tougher fines for those that have released torrents of sewage into British waterways. But it has, I think, also got a lot of experts and commentators and kind of fiscal think tank bods looking at the kind of the companies that could also be targeted. And I think, banks could be an option as well. Some have done very well from higher interest rates in terms of their revenues.
I'd actually cheer equalising capital gains and income tax. So I think there's a fundamental unfairness we're getting to here in this piece. There's no figures on how many people have sold off assets, but I can believe this is actually happening. But they can shift around their cash to avoid tax increases. No, somebody going to work can't do that. You've got you can't say, "Can I have next month's pay, please?" Because I think the tax rate might go up. And you see, look at why should gains on businesses, second homes, and shares be taxed at between 10 and 28% compared to people working who are paying between 20 and 45%? I just think there's a fundamental unfairness there in the system. And if she tackles it, if the Chancellor tackles that and she raises some money for it, either fill black holes, improve public services, or make Britain fairer by redistributing cash, I'll be one who cheers that.
But, there might be a small landlord, for example, who might have inherited their family's property, decided to rent it out, and if you start selling those assets, you might have fewer properties to rent. I mean, there are consequences.
But they're getting an income. That's great. They've inherited the house, as you say, or they might have saved up for the house. It might be their pension. But why should they pay lower tax because they're renting out a property than somebody who's mopping floors in a hospital, or driving a bus, or working in a factory, or fighting fires, or in a shop? I just think that is unfair. Sorry, you rent out a house, you're probably doing less work renting it out than somebody who's doing a 40-hour week.
In the meantime, Sir Keir Starmer, in Europe, first of all in Berlin, then obviously in France for the Paralympic opening ceremony. This is a bilateral treaty he's talking about with Germany, and yet the billing is of this wider reset with Europe. Pressure again on whether he'll allow youth mobility, seem to deny it. Pressure seems to still be there. So what was your takeaway from hearing Sir Keir and Olaf Scholz in Berlin today?
I thought Keir Starmer left some wiggle room there. It was a classic formulation. No plans for an EU-wide...
No plans for tax rises.
For tax rises, we're old enough to remember that. No plans for an EU-wide youth mobility scheme. But he made clear he is interested in boosting cultural and educational exchanges, children being able to come and go.
Greeting the announcement, or the non-announcement.
Carry on, yeah.
Children on school trips, musicians looking to tour. I've spoken to UK government officials today who said, look, there's nothing in the realms of the scale of movement we've seen in traditional youth mobility schemes. It wouldn't be the level, duration of stays. But it does feel to me like there is some wiggle room there. And, of course, it is such a big ask from the EU. They've made that clear. The Commission put a formal proposal to the UK before the general election. Labour was pretty frosty then too, said, we don't want to return to freedom of movement and we are concerned a youth mobility scheme could be seen as synonymous with that. But I just, speaking to experts who follow this relationship so closely, is this Keir Starmer holding it back for now, but reserving it for further negotiations about things that Britain wants?
Yeah, very quick sentence, because...
Well, he's ruled out returning to the single market,
Customs Union,
freedom, but the tone will get him somewhere. And there's no political risks now, because most people regret Brexit. Was that poll, 59% would vote to re-enter if there was a referendum now. So the Reform will shower at him, Conservatives will shower at him. Look, they're old. They're stuck in the wrong place now. Being warmer, getting the barriers down is where it is at.
Check your social media later as well. Anyway,
Oh, yeah, a little scream, but that's it. I mean, you know, they can...
we'll have more on the story on the front page of The Sun, which says smoking could be banned from pub gardens. That and plenty more when we come back.
In a post on Instagram, he said 30 desert marathons in 30 consecutive days, all on sand. Yikes. I'm now a Guinness World Record holding endurance athlete, the first and only person to successfully run this many back-to-back marathons in those extreme conditions. Just over 42.2 kilometres or 26.2 miles every single day. That is 1,274.2 kilometres of the world's toughest terrain, with no comfort in which to recover.
There's kind of two main reasons behind it, I suppose. One's charitable, so we're trying to raise money for Globals Make Some Noise. I had the great fortune of meeting some of the small charities that they support. They support about 100 small charities across the UK, small charities that don't have access to lots of funds. And the other is personal, I suppose. I had a fairly turbulent relationship with alcohol for many years, so I suppose I'm trying to prove to my former self that things that would have been out of my reach are kind of feasible now. I abused alcohol for many years. It kind of was masked as fun, I suppose, for a long time and only became problematic. Later on, I was teetotal for a period of 4 years, which I think was incredibly helpful for me. My advice to anyone who's struggling with alcohol or feels that they have developed, bad habits that they're struggling to shake is to try and do exactly that. Try and channel your addictive nature into something else, into sport, into running. The funds that we're raising are going to go a really long way to improving the lives of many people here in the UK who deeply deserve it. And, my pain over the course of these 30 marathons was temporary in comparison to their permanent pain. I've been greatly inspired by people who have pushed their bodies through limits that, I would have thought just wasn't possible. And now to consider myself, in at least a similar camp to them is how I would define progress. I often had, between 3 and 4 hours kip at night, and then you're expected, obviously, to get out and do it all again. So I have to say that I feel very proud.
Well, welcome back. You are watching the press preview, joined once again by Kevin Maguire, Associate Editor of the Daily Mirror, and Lucy Fisher-Whitehall, Editor of the Financial Times. Welcome back to both of you. Kevin, should we go to The Guardian now? The Tories woefully understated the cost of asylum claims, a think tank. Woeful budgeting at the Home Office, in fact, is what they've described here.
Yeah, this is the Institute of Fiscal Studies, that the Home Office was claiming that the cost of running asylum, border, visa and passport operations, this doesn't include hotels or anything, but just all the staff and the operations was 110 million a year when the real figure was about 2.6 billion, which is a huge difference. Now, of course, this suits the UK Labour government coming out now, because again, they can say the Tories covered up the cost of operations, the black hole, which then will justify tax rises that'll be coming in the October 30 budget. But certainly,
And it wasn't just that more people turned up. Is that no?
no. This is just that they were hiding the figures, which.
But to put the other side of it, I've spoken to former Treasury officials who say, well, actually, this is a spending control mechanism that's often used. You don't allow the department to kind of run riot and fully fund something, and that in particular, asylum costs have had to use the reserves for several years in a row now, and that's kind of it's known. It's kind of within. If not formally within the budgeting process, it's sort of informally, it's acknowledged between the Treasury and the department. It's that kind of thing. So that's just the other side to put to this particular claim.
Yeah,
but it wasn't made public.
No.
True.
No.
No cigarettes and alcohol is the front page of The Sun, just to cheer everybody up. Ban on smoking in pub gardens. What is the suggestion here, Kevin?
That within government, Chris Whitty, the Chief Medical Officer, is backing a ban on smoking where people congregate. So there is contact. So pub gardens, outside sports stadiums, outside nightclubs and so on. And the reason being, of course, the ban on smoking indoors in public places has been hugely successful in terms of saving lives and starting to change people's behaviour. The number of people smoking now must be about, I think, 1 in 6. It used to be more than half the population. Wouldn't apply to gardens if anybody's worried, but smoking costs the NHS, according to the Sun report, 21.8 billion a year, which is a huge toll if that figure is accurate. But there's going to be a public consultation, so everyone can shout nanny state if they like, or save lives if they want.
And another bit of nanny statism, this time not from the government, is the suggestion that you shouldn't be allowed to have more than 2 alcoholic drinks before getting on a plane.
I like a nanny state, actually.
Do you? Yeah.
Wealthy people have nannies. Jacob Rees-Mogg had a nanny. Why can't poorer people have a nanny in the state?
You have certainly Michael O'Leary, Chief Executive of Ryanair, calling the shots. I think it's not necessarily a bad idea putting a 2-pint or 2-drink limit on passengers before they board a flight.
2 pints of wine, I mean.
Certainly.
Yeah, 2 pints of wine.
They impose it for pilots.
It does feel like there's been a massive uptick this summer in rowdy Brits, and it is always Brits, isn't it, being kind of bundled off planes in Europe by continental gendarmes and similar for boozy behaviour.
It's mixing with the pressure and, oxygen, whatever, isn't it?
Don't they sell booze on Ryanair flights?
I know, well, that's it.
If he stopped selling booze on...
2 pints in the airport and 5 on the plane.
Then I'd take one a little more seriously. Well, does it really matter if somebody's had 3 pints?
Shouldn't laugh at it. Serious suggestion.
No, it is. Well, it is when people are rowdy, but for whatever reason, they are rowdy is the problem. It isn't always drink.
Kevin, Lucy, lovely to see you both. Thank you. See you in the 11. Here's the weather. Well, there'll be showers in the north and west tomorrow, but it will be mostly fine to end the week. There'll be a mild start, although cooler than today. A few fog patches over Northern Ireland and the southwest, and a scattering of showers near western coasts. Most places will stay dry with long sunny spells through the morning. Northern, central and western parts will see a scattering of blustery showers spreading from the west. They'll be concentrated over Scotland, turning heavy, possibly thundery in places there. Cooler and fresher than today. The afternoon will bring little change, showers becoming increasingly isolated towards evening. Well, our press preview and news review continues in Sky News at 11. Pressure certainly on the Chancellor to take action to prevent people feeling the financial heat this winter. Back in a moment.